Glass and Flame. River Rising. Since the destruction of Sirach, Imperial and Grendel forces have striven for control of Madruga. Possession of the territory has been further complicated by the rise of the Children of Rex, who have stolen Free Landing, and by the presence of the Dry Patricians and the blighted wound that was once the Great Grasses. After the summer solstice, however, the Empire's armies withdraw without warning, destined for very different battlegrounds. The Grendel, however, and the majority of their Asavean allies remain in Sirach Plains. They have taken a defensive position, transforming villages and farmsteads across the region into ramshackle fortifications. The main force continues to occupy the ruins of Sirach, with the Grendel navy supporting them. Two of the Asavean battleships, the newly arrived Breath of Crimson and Foam Dancer, continue to patrol the shoreline, remaining alert for any threat from the Empire or from the pirate followers of Siaka. No such threat materializes, at least no threat that can be fought. Following the hurricane that struck the territory after the spring equinox, the weather in Madruga remains absolutely foul, with torrential rains, rumbling thunder, roaring winds, and thick black clouds that shroud the sun. When the Squirero River catastrophically breaks free from its channel and pours down into the Blightheart, Grendel Orc and Imperial human alike are unsurprised. Even those who have not been warned of the magical working that aims to use the river to cleanse the great grasses are prepared for something to happen. Yet no amount of advance warning can prepare them for the reality of what happens. All along its length, the capricious Squirero begins to rise, filled with dangerous energy, eager to break its banks and see new parts of the Brass Coast. The magic of spring rouses the river into a roaring dragon of foam and thunder that sweeps down from the mountains towards the sea and threatens ruin to everything and everyone in its path. But the fate of Madruga and the changes wrought by the twisting river are for the future. There are other happenings along the western shores of the Bay of Catazar that command our attention. The Reigns of Ceravado. Perhaps the Grendel ask themselves where the Empire's army are, given they are not fighting in Madruga. Perhaps they pretend they don't know the answer, but they must realize what is coming. Imperial forces regroup, gather in Luck Springs on the western banks of the Squirero, 8 entire armies, mustering in Ceravado as the skies darken and spring magic-infused rain starts to fall. All 3 freeborn armies are here, the Burning Falcon, the Fire of the South, and the Red Wind Corsairs. From the north, from Wintermark, come the experienced Fist of the Mountains and the cunning Narwhal's Spear. From the Eastern Empire march the Eastern Sky, the valiant Pegasus and the Wolves of War, a sea of banners ready to bring ruin to the Grendel now that their governor is slain. Nearly 20,000 additional soldiers, auxiliaries commanded by independent captains, have come to join the grand host that will drive the Grendel from Faraz. Almost all fight alongside the Wolves of War, effortlessly fitting into that army thanks to the autumn enchantment that binds each warrior to a common cause. The Wolves are further reinforced by a cadre of Tasatan siege masters on loan from the College of Engineering and well paid for their work in the war zone. They know the Brass Coast well enough to bring great supplies of timber with them, planks and logs dragged in ox carts along the trods from the forests of Misericord. A handful of bright-eyed sandfishers accompany them, eager to see more of the Empire. As well as mortal soldiers, there are some 8,000 warriors of the Summer Realm, golden champions and crimson warriors drawn from the fields of glory to fight for the Empire. 4 Lords of the Penance lead the troops, mighty nobles of the court of the Lion of Summer. Dindrain, a proud feather-browed war witch with a staff of adamant, commands elfin heroes in mithril chain beside the eastern sky. With them are a score of Eleonaris trumpeteers, charged with rousing the knights and war witches of dawn to seek the greatest victory, engaging the strongest foes and embracing the risks of battle. Kor, a lion-maned warlord in scarlet armour, leads a battalion of swift-footed knights with the lower bodies of great cats, armed with lances alongside the Burning Falcon. Mermastus, a staghorn spearmaster with a great 2-handed bouge, resplendently dressed in viridian and incarnadine scales, commands a cohort of furious spear dancers to accompany the Fire of the South into battle. A mighty warband of rune-armoured hammersmiths, led by the herald Elodian, march alongside the Fist of the Mountains, their thunderous blows sending any who dare to face them sprawling in the mud. As before, there are emissaries of Janan alongside the Burning Falcon. The army has finally completed their transformation, and the flame of true conviction blazes in their hearts. The heralds urge the freeborn warriors and the lion knights of Eleonaris alike to embrace their fury, to seek righteous vengeance against the Grendel orcs who dared to claim the Brass Coast as their own, against the folk who butchered the Justicars and burned Shantarim. There should be no quarter asked or given. Those who heed their words fight with barely contained frenzy against the Grendel, their passions blazing like flames in their breasts. As the Squirero starts to rise, as the spring magic worked in Anvil in the summer solstice begins to infuse the river waters, the armies leave Ceravado. The Empire marches to Faraz. Across Aranseri, Nearly 3 years ago, fighting between the Grendel and the Empire was ended by paper and ink. A treaty that conceded the whole of Faraz to the Orcs of the Broken Shore. With a heavy heart, the Freeborn Assembly gave voice to the sorrow of their nation and warned their people that there was no certainty that the Empire would be able to reclaim the territory any time soon. With the aid of hundreds of Imperial captains, both fleet and warband, the majority of the people of Faraz were able to escape the tyranny of the Grendel governor Rahab and find sanctuary in Madruga, Karaman and Segura. For many, the assumption was that it would be at least a generation before the Freeborn were able to return to Faraz. Barely a month after the summer solstice, the Burning Falcon lead the way across the border into Aranseri. Only the eastern sky is able to keep pace to them, both armies roaring into Faraz with absolute commitment to victory, to seizing triumph by the throat and making it their servant. Fires of ambition and pride blaze as the warriors of the Brass Coast and Dawn set the pace. The fire of the south and the Redwind Corsairs are barely a step behind them, leading the overwhelming assault that flows into the wake of the Falcon and the Sky. The Winterfolk and the Highborn are no less passionate in their advance, forming with the Freeborn a great wave of steel that sweeps across the grasslands towards Aran, bringing up the rear the measured tread of the Wolves of War, slowed a little by the ox carts that carry the materials needed to craft the engines of war. They strive to keep pace with the tide of battle that sweeps eastward towards the town of Aran. They march under heavy clouds. The weather in Faraz is no better than that in Madruga. Rain, thunder, wind, all add an extra level of drama to the Imperial advance. Magicians with the armies concur grimly that this weather is not natural. It is the result of a curse laid over Faraz, most likely by the children of Rex rather than the Grendel or their Asavean allies. Rumour has it that the traitors called to the banner of the High Priestess Shrivarn have seized the Khazar Straits just as they did Free Landing to the north. The rain is relentless, slowing the advance of the armies a little, turning the grasslands of Aranseri into a sea of mud. When the Grendel seized the territory, they established the hateful and greedy Governor Rahab in Aran. Not a salt lord, for there is no mithril mine in Faraz. Not a member of the ruling council, but a servant of the salt lords. Bitterness easily turning to fury, the Empire taunted Rahab again and again, heedless of the consequences. They drove him to the verge of apoplexy as they stole the people out of the territory from under his nose, snatched the bounty of the Squirrero nets from his grasp, and mocked his failures at every turn. Rahab is dead now, fallen before Imperial heroes in the recent battle on the Siroc plains. News of his death has already reached Aran with suspicious speed. A new governor has seized the reins of power, assuming control of Rahab's palace, with surprisingly little disruption. Questions about how the new ruler will command the conquered territory are rendered utterly moot by the arrival of tens of thousands of Imperial soldiers in Faraz. The Grendel struggle to mount a defence as the armies draw near to the heart of Grendel dominance of the territory. The garrison on Mora's Rock, several thousand strong, is on the back foot. They know the Empire has crossed the borders. One cannot conceal so great a force from watchers, but they are clearly not expecting the invaders to completely bypass their fortress. Part of the garrison has already marched to support the defenders of Aran, likely expecting fighting in Madruga, forcing the Grendel armies there to retreat south into Aranseri. They are likewise unprepared for the sheer scale of the force arrayed against them. The Siege of Aran. Aran has been fortified. The jealousy of Rahab requires that his palace be at least the equal of the Salt Lords, and so he has squandered the last of his fortune on Asavean stone. A fortified estate in the heart of Aran, with partially complete white granite walls to ring the town itself. It is clear that the tyrant of Faraz is in the process of further fortifying the town, but it looks a lot as if he has run out of money. Perhaps that is why he risked the ultimately fatal decision to join the forces fighting in Madruga. There are almost no freeborn left in Aran. Those who did not escape after the territory was ceded to the Grendel, those who were unable to arrange for the priests of Asavea to smuggle them across the bay to Siroc, have been enslaved and set to work on the farms and herb gardens. In their place are several thousand Grendel citizens. Most are soldiers. This is a garrison town dedicated to protecting their ill-gotten gains from the Empire. They seize their weapons and mount the walls, such as they are, and try to defend the town. Their efforts are almost useless. While the other Imperial armies quickly and efficiently seize Aranseri and establish a cordon around the town, the battle engineers accompanying the Wolves of War swiftly construct 24 catapults, covered rams and siege towers, and a thicket of ladders with which to mount the walls. As soon as they are ready, the assault begins with a barrage of rocks and stones against the walls providing cover for the advance of the rams and siege towers. The gates of Aran fall within the first hour. From there, the fighting floods into the streets of Aran. To their credit, the Grendel warriors do their best to slow and contain the Empire. They seek to delay the Empire long enough to allow the merchants and civilians to escape via the ships that cluster at the docks. The narrowing of the battleground does a little to counter the Empire's overwhelming advantage of numbers, and their numbers are supplemented by a few hundred Asavean mercenaries eager for the fight. But it is not enough. The siege lasts barely until sunset. The palace of Rahab is pounded to rubble by siege engines. The soldiers who had taken refuge there flattened along with the white granite walls. When the palace falls, the fire goes out of the Grendel. Those who have not fled by sea break through the cordon and escape south towards Fontargenta. It is a grievous victory, however. The fighting that raged through the town, the overwhelming assault, the barrage of catapult stones, has left many of the buildings in ruin and many more damaged. A fire breaks out at the docks, and despite the dreadful weather, it threatens to spread out of control. League soldiers fight long into the night to bring it under control. It's uncertain how it started. The last Grendel merchants attempting to ensure that nobody can follow them in the remaining ships, perhaps. An intentional, spiteful effort by the remaining Assaveans to turn Iran into a pyre as they did with Sirach, maybe. Or perhaps an accident. The chaos of war lends itself well to such things. Those fleeing Iran who make it to the open waters of the Bay of Katazar discover it is not only the Empire they should fear. A dozen pirate vessels out of the Khazar Straits fall on the fleeing ships, slaughtering and robbing. The Imperial armies are unable to do anything, even if they were tempted to do so. Barely one vessel in 3 makes it to the open waters, outrunning the Siaka-maddened jackals. The Red Wind Corsairs, who are the only force in Faraz who might have been able to even attempt to aid their fleeing foes, are too busy freeing nearly 60 Corsairs from their chains, slaves taken from the islands when the Grendel conquered them, that and ensuring a good showing when it comes time to reveal their haul. This may be a former freeborn port, but the wealth here is Grendel wealth, and even without specific orders, the Red Wind are not shy about helping themselves to the ill-gotten gains of their enemies. All slaves in Iran are of course freed, whether orc or human, but there is one complication. The priests of Ballo and the Black Bull. When the city falls, when the Imperial forces reach the walls of the Assavean temple, the priests open the doors and surrender. They send their slaves out first, and raise no hand against the Imperial soldiers. The leader of these Assaveans, an old Assavean priest of Ballo with boundless reserves of dignity, maintains that they have not only never harmed any Imperial citizen, they have in fact helped a significant number of freeborn citizens escape Faraz over the last few years. A few Imperial soldiers have heard rumours that seem to confirm what they say, and there is evidence of a secret passage connecting the temple grounds to the nearby shore and a smuggler's key. They insist on surrendering to the commanders of the freeborn armies and ask to be repatriated to Asavea. There is a great deal of discussion about what to do, about the fate of the temple building, but in the end it is determined that the decision lies with the generals of the Brass Coast, Fontargenta and Bramar and Afar. With the town liberated, the Empire pushes south into Fontargenta. The Grendel garrison makes a stand at Bramar, the surviving warriors from Iran reinforced by more soldiers from Mora's Rock. When the Empire arrives, however, the town is already under attack. A ragtag fleet of ships is attacking the docks, orcs and humans alike seemingly bent on destruction and looting the quayside. More children of Rex, who scatter when the Imperial armies arrive and flee with their ill-gotten gains back to the Khazar Straits. The remaining Grendel warriors do their best, but the 1-2 punch of pirates and Imperial soldiers leaves them no choice but to flee, the eastern sky and burning falcon close on their heels. They fall back again and again across the grasslands of Fontargenta and Afarjassa. A brief siege takes place at Afar, but the Fist of the Mountains and the Narwhal's Spear make quick work of the defenders there. Governor Rahab has established large farms in Afarjassa, with the town of Afar as his regional capital. Several hundred slaves were held there in great dormitories, forced to work the lands until they fell, with the same heedless cruelty that Grendel show to those who toil in their salt mines. The Winterfolk liberate these people and execute the orcs responsible for their durance. Most are Imperial citizens, but maybe 100 come from further afield, brought by Rahab from the slave markets of the Broken Shore. Those who are not already Imperial citizens are offered new homes in the Empire. At the same time, the valiant Pegasus chase fleeing Grendel warriors south towards the border with Chavron, the territory the Lysambrian orcs called Kalino. When they reach the hills, the orcs find an army of the Iron Confederacy camped just across the border, waiting for them. Perhaps the leader of the fleeing Grendel hoped the Sarani will remain neutral, that they may be able to find sanctuary among them. Or perhaps there is some truth to the rumour that the Sarani have signed a peace treaty with the orcs of the Broken Shore, a mutual defence pact against the Empire. The Grendel never find out. The valiant Pegasus catch them still a quarter-day march from the border, and not one escapes. The Iron Confederacy knights make no effort to intercede, although there are reports of scouts in watchtowers atop the hills, watching the slaughter with spyglasses. Fontargenta and Afarjassa fall to the Empire. The territory is Imperial once again. The shadow of Mora's Rock. The Empire's momentum finally falters as they reach Morajasse. While the Grendel have been retreating, fleeing by sea, or seeking notional sanctuary in the lands of the Sarani, the majority have gathered in the shadow of Mora's Rock. The Wolves of War have brought many of their siege engines from Oran to aid in the assault against Mora's Rock. But it is no simple matter to get close to the castle. The garrison are keen-eyed, well prepared, and know the danger of letting the League forces get too close. They launch pinpoint accurate raids against the Imperial forces, targeting not only the catapults, but the engineers who maintain them. The Wolves of War help to deal with some of the outlying defences, watchtowers and fortified garrisons, but even the furious energy of the Burning Falcon is starting to flag, and they do not get close enough to storm the walls of Mora's Rock. The fortification there has been significantly bolstered during Grendel tenure. It is now a match for Our Lady of Pride, or Roima's Rest, dominating the rolling plains in which it stands. The surviving garrison regroups here, along with several hundred Grendel driven out of their stolen homes. A makeshift village of tents surrounds the castle itself, and anyone who can hold a sword or shield is pressed into service by the commander of the fort, Galam Firsach. Firsach is no crony of Rahab, according to those slaves liberated in Faraz. They are a veteran of a dozen battles against the Empire, known for their vigilance and their cunning, a strategist who has spent the years of peace establishing massive stocks of supplies within the wall of Mora's Rock. They have overseen the expansion of the fortification to its current size. Respected by the Salt Lords, Firsach is an old general, and knows the Empire and how it thinks. They must know they cannot win, but there is no talk of surrender. It may be that they are bluffing, or maybe that they expect a Grendel counterattack at any moment. If the forces currently in Madruga come south, the garrison of Mora's Rock will greatly bolster their ability to recapture the territory. If they don't, then the Empire will be forced to leave armies here and try and take the castle. There is a rumour that Firsach's partner, a wind lord of the Grendel named Saoirse, is in the fortress, backed up by a coven of orc wizards skilled in the rituals of war. While they could not hope to fight off the force arrayed before the castle, they can make the Empire pay dearly for doing so. Faraz is freed. The conquest of the territory has been by no means bloodless. The Grendel soldiers have fought tooth and nail to keep the Imperial armies at bay. It's also clear that the Empire are not the only people assaulting the Grendel. The Children of Rex have launched their own opportunistic attacks against their former allies from the Broken Shore. Yet the pirates have no love for the Empire either. Shortly before the autumn summit, word reaches Anvil that the waters around the Khazar Straits, like those around Free Landing, are teeming with deadly beasts and vicious pirates, making any attempt to conquer the region by Imperial armies untenable without naval support. As the autumn equinox dawns, the Empire has liberated Faraz. The Senate will need to decide which Imperial nation it is assigned to. The lands have long been part of the Brass Coast, but the painful truth is that few freeborn remain here now. There is also the matter of Mora's Rock. The Empire has made inroads into Morajasi, but thanks to the castle and the strategy of Galam Firsach, it is still firmly under the thumb of the Grendel. The territory itself is in shambles. Years of ruthless domination by Rahab, 3 months of dreadful fighting, and the lashing, destructive, cursed weather raised by the Children of Rex has left towns ruined, fields flattened, hopes dashed. The battle to liberate Faraz may be won, for the moment at least, but the war continues. Game information. Faraz. Faraz has been conquered by the Empire and may be assigned by the Imperial Senate. The territory has been run into the ground by the former governor Rahab. Khazar Straits has gained the island quality, similar to Free Landing in Madruga. The territory is under the influence of a spring magic curse that hastens destruction and deepens the wounds of war. The Empire has conquered Aransari, Fontargenta, and Afarjasa. They are perhaps a tenth of the way into conquering Mora's Rock. Faraz has 5 regions, and by controlling 3 of them, they have conquered the territory. The Imperial Senate can assign the territory during the autumn equinox. If they do so, a new senator will be appointed during the winter solstice. Faraz has been run into the ground by Rahab, eager to extract every drop of profit from the place. Those freeborn who once lived there have, at the urging of the National Assembly, made new lives in other parts of the Brass Coast, and most have little interest in returning at this time. Rebuilding the territory to even a fraction of its former wealth will likely require significant investment in Faraz in the coming seasons. However, if the territory is assigned to the freeborn, it will arrest the decline of their armies for the time being at least. While the territory is in a parlous state, it is still sufficient to restore the nation's supply to full. Khazar Straits has the same island quality as Free Landing. It cannot be attacked by Imperial armies that are not transported by a navy. There is no sign of a great maelstrom there at this time, however, suggesting that conquering the islands might be easier. But it is difficult to say with certainty what kind of forces the Children of Rex might be able to call on in the coming months. The territory is currently under the effect of ruinous rains, a curse that directly opposes Regrow the Land's Heart. Similar to Rivers of Life and Rivers Run Red, Regrow the Land's Heart can remove the ruinous rains, but will need to be performed a second time to have any effect. Otherwise, the curse will cause the destruction and scars created by war to worsen in the coming months, Even if the curse is removed, Regrow the Land's Heart can do little to repair the destruction caused by years of mismanagement and the recent fighting. They can only help the scars caused by such events to heal more swiftly. The rubble of a Parador might be overgrown with flourishing new plants, but it cannot be rebuilt with spring magic. Only military units who supported the Wolves of War in Faraz received shares of the Imperial Guerdon. A standard military unit received 5 shares, with additional ranks from upgrades or enchantment providing an additional share each. The Palace of Rahab, a rank 1 fortification, has been reduced to rubble. Game information. Asavean diplomacy. The priests at the Temple of Ballo and the Black Bull have surrendered to the freeborn generals. Perhaps 30 Asavean priests and acolytes serving the gods Ballo and the Black Bull have surrendered to the freeborn generals. They are currently under guard in Oran, in the temple where they once served. They claim that they are innocent and have done nothing to harm the people of the Brass Coast. They ask to be repatriated to Asavea. They are barbarians, and the decision about what to do, whether to execute them as enemies of the Empire or return them to their people, lies with the majority decision of the 3 freeborn generals. The Herald of the Council waits to hear the decision of the generals during the autumn equinox. If they are to be repatriated, or if a ransom is demanded, the ambassador to Asavea will presumably be able to arrange as much with their opposite number in the archipelago. This will only be necessary or possible if the generals agree to repatriate the priests, rather than execute them. Executing the priests will send a clear message to the Asaveans that they will find no mercy in their dealings with the Brass Coast. It will also likely be seen as just retribution against the Asaveans for the destruction of Shantarim and the Isle of Asani, as well as the recent murder of Imperial missionaries in Asavea. Game information. Mora's Rock. Mora's Rock is still in Grendel hands, under the skilled command of Gallum Firsuk. Commander Gallum Firsuk commands a garrison of several thousand Grendel in Morajase. They are believed to be supported by a powerful Grendel magician, a master of battle magic, and their coven. The Empire could certainly lay siege to Mora's Rock. It is a rank 2 fortification, but it would be costly and time-consuming, especially since spies suggest that Saoirse may be capable of laying an enchantment on the fortification, with the supplies of crystal mana secured within its walls, or of drawing on a boon presented by an allied Eternal to achieve the same effect. At the moment, Commander Firsuk has shown no sign of surrendering, but diplomacy might be possible. A winged messenger could be dispatched to Gallum Firsuk or Windlord Saoirse at Mora's Rock, Morajase, Faraz. They must know that their position is untenable, and it might be possible to persuade them to give up their fight against the Empire. Participation. Touched by Glory. Characters whose military units fought alongside Knights of Glory may gain additional benefits from doing so. 4 of the armies fighting in Faraz this season were accompanied by Knights of Glory. When the strategy of the army aligns with the glorious intent of the heralds, unpredictable side effects may occur. In this case, a character whose military unit was assigned to support the Burning Falcon, or the Fire of the South, may choose to embrace a potent role-playing effect that represents the inspiration provided by the heralds. The effects fade at the end of the autumn equinox, or if you somehow overcome the role-playing effect involved. The Burning Falcon not only fought with true conviction, but was also accompanied by heralds of Janon, who whipped many of the fighters, both mortal and eternal, into blazing bonfires of wrath. If your military unit supported the army, you may choose to have fought alongside the Summer Champion Corps and their cohort of swift-footed cat centaurs. This allows you to embrace a role-playing effect. Your passions burn brightly in your breast, and you find it difficult to remain silent when you hear of someone being wronged. It is difficult not to take immediate, direct action when you think someone is suffering injustice. This effect is particularly pronounced if you have the Changeling lineage. As long as you experience the role-playing effect, you gain an additional bonus hero point, even if you don't possess the hero skill. Your maximum number of hero points is increased by 1. And if you are exposed to a role-playing effect that creates fear or doubt, such as the Druj Miasma, you can respond by becoming incandescently angry instead. The Fire of the South likewise threw themselves body and spirit into the liberation of Faraz, engaging in a committed, overwhelming assault. If your military unit supported the Fire of the South, you may choose to have fought alongside resplendently stag-horned Mermastus and their furious spear dancers. This allows you to embrace a role-playing effect. You feel driven to display your prowess and pride to others, especially those who doubt you. It is easy and joyous to engage in battle, to sing and to dance. As long as you experience the role-playing effect, you have a temporary hero point, which is always the first one to be spent. Once during the summit, when you are exposed to a role-playing effect that creates fear or doubt, such as the Druj Miasma, you can respond by becoming incandescently angry instead. While the Fist of the Mountain and the Eastern Sky were also accompanied by Knights of Glory, and in the case of the Dawnish army also drawing on the favour of Eleonaris, no military unit supported them, so the boons granted by Dindrain and Elodian are not relevant at this time.